Hey, Pat.
Hey, Angela.
Good to see you.
Nice to be chatting with you. We've been chatting off and on for quite a while, and um, I'm excited to learn what you're up to with this new course you've been developing or you've been offering recently. And just a reminder to folks who are listening in of your amazing background. I know everything I learned, limited as it is, but I learned everything I know from the top tier people about in Pilates from you yourself and the first generation teachers that you introduced me to. And then the same for gyrotonics. You were I learned about gyrotonics from you and met Julio who developed it. And so I've learned so much from you. And I also know you're an amazing body worker, massage therapist, as well as a teacher of the Feldenkrais method. Did I leave anything out there, Angela?
No, I think that'll do it. I think that'll do it. And I love the way all those pieces thread together. From my
Right.
background, growing up as a gymnast and then a dancer, and then having gone through severe injuries and rehabbing, using all the techniques you talked about,
Yeah.
and then studying them and finding such interesting ways in which they actually weave together in terms of principles and thoughts.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for bringing in that part about the gymnastics and the dance performing arts background. And yeah, you've had some uh, unwanted but beneficial, I'm sure, in their own distinct ways, direct experience um, of these ways of regaining function, improving function. And I think sometimes I know I've looked at my own life, maybe you too, of the various things we've learned. And then
Mm.
sometimes you might wonder, well, that was kind of a wandering path, but if we hadn't wandered in those directions, we wouldn't have developed the insights and the distinctive offerings that we have.
Yeah, that's actually an important point. In the gear shift I made from being a performer, a gymnast, a dancer, in which you're creating a certain form, a certain expression, right? And a certain technique, a certain line in your body, right? And
Right.
rely on your body to be able to, so you fall down, you get back up, you're fine, you keep going. And so, having performed at a really high level, it was quite shocking for me to have that power taken away when I initially was in a bad car accident in my 20s, which is what led me on this path. And
Hmm.
it really changed my perception of time because you can't jump up and just go back to what you were doing, as I had become accustomed to in my body. And it led me on an internal search and changed my relationship within myself, and then offered me a career of sharing that with others by being a movement and bodywork professional. And I feel like it was a very rewarding transition because there's it's such a gift to see someone feel better, to see the results. It's very different than being on a stage where you don't have that personal relationship, and to work with people one on one or educating teachers in groups and experience the what becomes of their lives, how it expresses through their lives and their new sense of well-being and expression of themselves.
Yeah, I love that. I hear you saying how much, if you will, such gratitude and joy comes from not only our own successes and expressions of what we dream and want to be with our lives, but then helping others to achieve those dreams and reach those goals carries its own deep reward and gratitude. And it's such a, a loving place to come from, where in my view of wanting to help others be best they can be. And there's many ways of doing that, and you and I have found our ways. And speaking of which, you've got this new program you've put together called Neuroplasticity and Exploration in Movement.
That's
And
right.
yeah, and you're offering this course again coming up in April 13th, 17th, and May 11th. So
Online, yes.
yeah, online. So people can access it from anywhere in the world, right? That's the
Right, that's right.
beauty of online learning. What would you love listeners to know about this course?
Well, I am super excited about this course because I want to share ways to improve the quality of life by using movement to access the brilliance of the nervous system and enhance people's lives. And I look back on my career and I've had a great privilege of success in my field.
Mhm.
And I feel like there are secrets within that I'm eager to share and make tangible to others. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, it sounds like a very big promise, but what a promise is to make it obvious, to make it accessible, and to make it enjoyable.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I love that, and I'm jotting a few notes here. If you see me looking down, I'm just making some notes so I can capture those great words. Yeah, so I appreciate your desire to increase quality of life and help people achieve their goals and share those with, seems secret, but also can be very obvious. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
I want it to become really tangible, right? And so how is that going to happen? It's going to happen experientially, right? So it's not like when people hear the word neuroplasticity, it sounds like a really complex science, right? Like, oh, those are for some other types of people. But there are really foundational elements of it that can be understood by anyone and can be applied by anyone. And
Yeah.
it's all about just the brilliance and the magic of our nervous systems that's now recognized by science in the form of neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So, what that's taught us is that we are capable of growth and change through our entire lives if we just understand a few of these basic tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. From your background and my background as well, we've known there've been people that have thought, well, this must be happening because we see it happen in the
Yes.
people that we work with. And
Yes.
it just took, if you will, science a few decades to catch up and be able to demonstrate it in ways that some people won't believe it until they I won't believe it till I see it. Well, they can see it in themselves, but they wanted to see some of the evidence that came about as science has developed the methods to be able to
Yeah. So one
demonstrate
of
this.
the things I enjoy doing is providing some of the history and some of the science to give
Mhm.
people a foundation because it's much easier to buy in if you understand the tangible science behind it.
Yeah, yeah. We're not just making this stuff up.
Right, right. And you and I have the good fortune of having studied the Feldenkrais technique, which
Mhm.
is a system of movement re-education created by physicist Moshe Feldenkrais. And I think of him as a pioneering neuroplastician 60 years before his time, at least.
Yeah,
And what he did really was he realized that movement was a way to access the organization of ourselves
yeah,
and access change in ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's something we'll go into in great depth through the course.
Yeah, so it's in his, it's in, Feldenkrais's, uh, technique or method in his teachings, and it's in the title of your course about exploration. So, can you say more? What's special about this exploration approach, and how do you distinguish it from a focus on technique or other approaches to exercise and fitness?
That's really important because I have spent a lot of my life, as you know, teaching exercise systems like Pilates and Gyrotonic, and you've done a lot of athletic training and coaching as well, and that's kind of working more like from the outside in, I would call it, like
Mhm,
giving someone exercises to do a certain number of repetitions, a certain way to do them, and expecting that they get results. Yet, if you think about how do we really learn, and you think about an infant, it would be no one tells an infant, okay, now push down on your foot on this part, now do this with your eyes, now do this with your back,
yeah,
right? No,
right.
what do? They explore, right? They
Mhm,
explore their foot on the ground. And whoops, they put a little funny, so they topple over that way. And then the next time, whoops, they topple over the other way until they find that perfect trajectory. Whoa, and it's got a little instability, which lets them then start to walk. But
mm,
that is discovered through experimentation. Yeah.
mhm,
And our nervous system is really a system of wiring and messaging, right? And how we learn is through those reference points of experience, through exploration. So, through the contact with the floor the infant has, through the environment around them, through what they feel, what they hear, they sense. And then culture influences that as well,
mhm,
right?
right.
Um, and there are no two of us that are in any way completely alike. Each of us has an as independent of a fingerprint as gait, right? Like if
Mhm.
I saw you 2 blocks away walking toward me and I couldn't see your face yet, I'd know it was you.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
I know you too.
Yeah, like each person has their own
Mhm,
individual gait, right? That's
right,
embodied through movement. Yeah. Like even our facial expressions are controlled by movement and movement of our eyes, movements of our
right,
mouths, movements of our expression of our cheeks, our smiles, our frowns, our tears, right? All of it is movement.
yes.
And movement is experienced before speech, even. So it's very, very primal in its organization in
Mm,
us.
yeah, and yeah, so Moshe Feldenkrais, one of his lines was, "Movement is life," and without movement, there
That's
is no
right.
life, and, it is definitely one of those markers of when an organism is alive, and you mentioned
Even when
speech.
cells connect, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Neurons
and
connect.
yeah, and there's always movement happening on many different levels, and you mentioned eyes and speech, and people sometimes only think of movement as being those gross movements, and they forget about the movements that are happening that we often don't attend to, so like all the eye movements, the facial movements, the tongue, the speech, the swallowing, the movements in our digestive tract, the
Yes.
contraction of our heart. There's so much movement happening. It's not just about what's going on with the muscles, for
Yeah.
sure.
Let's talk
Um,
about that because I know you had the great pleasure of working with Dr. Esther Thielen, who
mm,
did more on research of developmental movement than probably just about anybody, right?
yeah, she had some influence, and she
Yes,
taught a lot
I
of the
do.
people that continue her work. Yeah.
But even before we're born, if we look back in terms of evolution of
Mm,
our species, there's those relationships with the tongue, the jaw, the eyes for millions of years, right?
mhm, mhm.
So and the movement, the undulation of our spine, yeah, which is how we moved ourselves through water, and you see that same sort of rhythmical flow in the gyrotonic method, and
Right.
it's organic movement, but each person has their very own way. Like no two people have the same bone length, bone weight, the
Right.
history in what's happened through their foot, through the shoes they wore, through their activities, through their lives. So, how can we possibly give one instruction and expect that to get that individual's best result, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Only that individual's nervous system can recognize its best way for that person, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big paradigm shift from me being the teacher, telling them what to do, correcting them, saying that what they're doing is wrong. It should be a different way to be more efficient. I mean, who am I to think that I know more than
Yeah.
your nervous system, right?
Yeah, yeah. So let me pause you there and pop in a question or two there. As you bring all this up, it's really important points, and you mentioned Esther Thielen and her work, and I think one of the things that she and others who have done the dedicated work of longitudinal studies of development have shown that most of us figure out how to walk. Not everybody does, but most of us figured out how to walk, but we all took our individual trajectories to get there. The same with
Right,
reaching and all of our movement skills, if you will. And within fitness and recovery from injury, I know some people put a big emphasis on getting the technique down, and
mhm,
I appreciate the attention to details, and I know biomechanics are important, and I'm wondering how this idea of exploration really fits in, and what does it have to do with how you started to touch on it? What does this have to do with how practitioners work with their clients? How do they how do they teach them to move better, have less pain, change their brains and nervous system?
right. So I would say step one is respect what the individual is doing.
Mm,
So, if we back up for a minute and look at how did the individual get to what they're doing, their habits created patterns for good reason,
mm,
as strategies for them to get to where they are that day. And the more, I mean, we need habits, right? We want to be able to eat lunch
right,
without thinking about how to pick up the fork, right? But
right.
sometimes, say in a sport, maybe somebody had an ankle injury or something that gave them a little bit of a gimp for a while, but they had to keep performing, right? But maybe
Mhm,
that took that that message, if you will, a line of wiring through their system of a certain pathway of movement that done again and again over time becomes deeply inhabited, I guess you would say. So for example, athletes, their habits are so deeply ingrained because they've repeated them so many times.
right.
So if you want to change technique, it's very, very difficult to just simply say to change it because their nervous system is firing so fast in that habitual way that
Mm,
there's no word or thought that can go faster than that firing that's automatic in their system. So we have to back up. We have to back way up, take the load off the body so that the body has new options to explore, right?
mm, right.
So for one thing, we have to make sure that the person is in a mode in their nervous system to be able to hear us, right?
Yeah,
The environment. So if they're in a lot of pain, it's not going to be the time to repattern
yeah,
their stride
right,
running, right? First, I got to
right,
get them out of pain. So first, creating an environment where their nervous system is not in fight or flight mode, where it can
right.
listen. Yeah,
Sh Yeah, shift them from that, sympathetic, fired up state and get them back into a parasympathetic state where they can feel safe and comfortable and open to exploring and doing something different, something they're not familiar with, and maybe they can discover that there's some other way to be doing what they're already pretty good at, but there's even room
right.
for improvement beyond that.
So, and what they're already good at, they're probably so good at, they're not even thinking about it anymore. So, if we bring them into feeling what they're doing first, so simply making them, taking them inside themselves. So, instead
Mhm.
of me saying, you do this, I'm going to have them sense what they are doing and gain a reference point from what they are doing because they're usually not aware of it, right? and
Yeah,
and and make an imprint in themselves of that. So, and then from there begin to explore variables and experiment with variables. So I'm going to invite them to try different things, and I'm going to invite them to sense what those different things do and which feels best, which feels easiest, which feels most efficient, right? And
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So what should listeners do to find out more about neuroplasticity and exploration and movement?
They can go to neuroplasticityinaction.com
Oh, right there it
and
is on the screen. Yeah,
right
or
there. And
neuroplasticity let me say it again for those who aren't who are just listening. Neuroplasticityaction.com.
that's right. You can find a website which will give you some quick tips. And if you want to sign up, we send out emails with information about neuroplasticity and movement, just continuing the educational process. The registration is on the website for the 3-day course coming up again beginning in April this time. Something I didn't mention is that the course is recorded, so
Mm,
I set it up this time to happen over a Saturday and then 2 weeks to another Saturday, then 2 weeks to another Saturday. So it's 3 Saturdays spread apart. So people have a chance to really assimilate, integrate, and practice what they learned before layering on more. And
great,
then
great.
they get unlimited access to the recordings. So they can go
Awesome.
back to it and repeat it as many times as they want. We're also on
Wonderful.
Facebook and we're also on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the same neuroplasticity in action?
Neuroplasticity in action. And we've just created, as of today, a new YouTube channel which you can find videos such as this.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks
Angela,
so much, Pat. It's
thank
always
you.
a pleasure.
Exactly. Always a pleasure when we get together. We'll have to do it again real
Let's
soon.
do it again.